Hey guys, this will be video 5 for the how to design build a chambered body 58 Flying V replica, and sometimes using Stuart McDonald templates, but for the most part design your own guitar and it'll be a lot more enjoyable, and build your own templates. This is going to be a fairly detailed video because we're going to do some deep dive conversation about setting up to do binding, as well as pressing in your anchors, installing the ground wire, and then as you've already set up the guitar and played it for a few days just to kind of feel, to make the determination of what you should or should not do, or whether you need to relocate studs and things like that, you're just moving into that realm of slowing down and finishing the guitar. And I'm going to talk about these little jigs that I made here, or these little patterns, templates, jigs, whatever. That wouldn't be a jig; it would be a template. And I'm bad about picking that up and calling it a jig when really it's a template. And then sometimes I'll pick up a jig and call it a pattern or some crap like that. So bear with me. A lot of times I'm trying to think 3 steps ahead so I can keep my video flowing, and I'll call that a screwdriver or something crazy like that. So anyway, in this video also I'm hoping to finish talking about how to truly do a really nice nut installation. And if I forget, just let your imagination run with you. Basically, if you buy a pre-machined nut where it's already slotted, try to minimize how much you change the depths of the slot. I know you're going to have to do a little bit, but I prefer to take the bottom off and go down real slow. Work my way to the finish line. So let's just dive in and let's talk about how we would go about, and then we'll talk about opening up these pickup control cavities later on. How, if you have a solid body and you've got a really good table that's really solid and rigid and everything, there's nothing wrong with hammering the anchors in. But I'm going to stop because, well, now that I brought it up, we don't have to talk about it. I shouldn't have even mentioned it, but this is how I build a guitar. Okay, I got this scrapper. Item right here. A lot of times I'll buy junk stuff in lots just to use as tools, and obviously that's a probably like an Epiphone bridge, anchor and all that jazz. But I could use that as a press. If I had a press, I could use that to press that anchor down into the body, right? And I don't damage anything. Well, probably not. You might want to put some tape around that. But what I have found is easiest to do, and especially if you were going to hammer them in, then you would take that all the way down to the bottom, and then you could lightly hammer those in. But that's a 1/2 inch hole that I cut right there to receive that anchor. But what I like to do is think about the job from a finish standpoint. Where do I want them to be positioned once they're pressed in and level and everything's true? I want to make certain that I don't end up with some craziness like that right there. But I don't want to have to back this one up a 1/2 of a turn in order to get them consistent, whether it's perpendicular to the center line or parallel to the center line in kind of like a snake eye fashion. But I typically do not tighten these right there at the end. And some guys might frown on that, but typically what I do is just back them off to where they're flat. They're in a line. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, you start with a Sharpie and you identify one stud as a treble side stud and one as the bass side. And if you're going to run them perpendicular to the center line, meaning the slot, then basically all you're going to do here is just come in, drive it down just by hand, and take your Sharpie. Okay, now I know that's my 3 o'clock position, but rather than putting it exactly at 3 o'clock, now if you want to torque yours really tight, put them exactly at 3 o'clock less, a little less, just under 3 o'clock. That way, when you go down, you can kind of torque into that, and you've got them really, really tight. But typically, what I do is, in the event it might jump and turn a little bit on me, I'll go ahead and turn that identifying line right there to about just a little bit more than 3 o'clock, maybe, maybe 2 degrees, 3 degrees, or something like that. That guarantees that I have control over the alignment and everything. Only just because I'm kind of a visual nerd about stuff like that, and but also because it allows me to make certain that if I go straight down, to the bottom, but then I determine, well, I want to raise that bridge, a 16th of an inch. Well, then I can just start backing off turns and keep the actual bridge itself true. I don't risk getting off a little bit. And trust me, I'm splitting hairs here, but it just guarantees that if I wanted to back that off 1.5 turns, then I back the other one off 1.5 turns, and I should be pretty close to still perfectly true on the body. Okay, so common sense type stuff, but it's one of those things that if you don't take the time to think about it, you might regret that when you're looking at it 15 years from now and you realize that, oh man, why didn't I just take the time to align those and put them in on some sort of put them in with reference to some sort of thought, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, so all right, so you're ready to install them. And I mentioned you can hammer them in, but typically what I do is I press them in with a C clamp. And I like to take, because, okay, I'm just going to say that you don't have any spare and you're going to have to use the ones that came out of the Clouson packet. Then all you got to do is put some masking tape on the top, not just one, but to put two, at a minimum, put about 2 pieces of masking tape up on the top. Identify that center line, and you've mixed up your epoxy, and you have taken a bamboo skewer, and you've just saturated the walls. Let's talk about this one because this one has a hole drilled in it. You've saturated the side walls, and then you've got your 24-hour epoxy mixed up over on a little side. And trust me, it's not going to take much. But you're going to want to, once you're ready to do this operation, do this one first, because this one over here, after you drill that half-inch deep hole at a very specified depth, you're going to want to come in with an 1/8 inch drill bit so you can drill. Okay, so you can drill on an angle from this location right here with an 1/8 inch drill bit. It's about a 16 inch long drill bit. It's an extended bit. And then I make certain you don't burn off the corner, but just drill straight through and very committed. And then you're going to be feeding your ground wire through with the end on it stripped. And you're going to strip it about 3/4 of an inch. So it's going to be fairly long, but that will guarantee that you've got a really nice ground wire in here that, if you want to make since we're going to consider this like a hollow body guitar, you want to make certain that this wiring harness is removable and serviceable, because I've got this guitar designed so it's a lot easier to service this guitar with this little hole, but you might want to be doing a lot of changes. So don't cut your ground wire short and then have to desolder that ground wire to remove that harness. Plan on having that tucked away or something like that, and then grounded back here, and it's real cool and out of sight. But then if you want to remove it, then you're able to remove the whole harness and have the harness up on the guitar where you've got it protected, of course, and then do your work. But by feeding that ground wire in, you have a internally permanent grounded ground wire, and at the anchor location, which is about as good of a ground wire as you can get. Okay, so you've got your epoxy in there and you're getting ready to press it in. What does that operation look like? Well, since this is a hollow body, a chambered body, the last thing we want to be doing is putting crushing pressure on that, especially the thinner the body, the more you've got to protect it. But you don't want to be hammering on this, because I'll shoot straight with you. If you're hammering them in, even with some sort of controlled item that you put atop that anchor. Like these are just cheap knockoff stuff that I use for demo purposes. But if you were hammering that in like that, uh, I don't want to be hammering on a hollow body guitar and hitting it with all that concussion, because you run the risk of cracking something. So this needs to be a very controlled joinery. All the more reason why I like the epoxy. It gives it about 50, if not 60% lubrication. I mean, these anchors just, they slide in with absolute ease. You can literally watch them go as you turn your crank. You can just watch them just ease down in a half-inch fitting. And then once that little bit of epoxy dries, you could put a B5 on there and vibramate and dive bomb with it. Okay, so what does it look like? You're going to want to have a real nice piece of clean poplar or something like that with no crap on it. And then I actually used a golf towel that's behind me, but I'm going to demonstrate it with a paper towel. And then obviously you'll have that behind it. And then you're going to want to have the guitar. I just had the guitar propped up like this and just resting, because I don't want to have it up here and then risk that falling and putting an indentation in the back of my neck. Just because I've got this wildcat fur here, that might not stop it from damaging the guitar. So basically, then you're just coming in atop your stud. And I've got just very gentle pressure on that. There's really no way I could screw that up. I don't think I would have actually had that turned a little bit more, so I'm not floating right here. I run the risk of cracking that back here if I don't have a better. I'm sorry. Make sure you just got a solid surface in there. Don't be risking that. And I'm not going to tighten on this, but the thing I like about working with a C-clamp, I can work with it like a micrometer, where I'm doing real ginger pressure if I want to, or I can just reach up here. It's not like I'm torquing it down, just read between the lines. But I like it a lot because it's, when you're using quality tools that are heavy duty, yeah, I could crush this thing if I want to, but by having a real clean perpendicular connection here, I'm able to take a overpowered tool and do a far more delicate job with it. But if I'm sitting out here trying to reach across there with quick grips, or I'm trying to hammer on it, I run the risk of introducing damage to a guitar that we have been working on for 2 years. I've been working on this thing for a long time, and the last thing you want to do is get in a hurry. And if you're not in the state of mind to calm down and spend 3 hours to set up just to do a 5-minute operation, then you need to flip off the lights and go cut your grass, or go take a trip or something, go fishing. But because if you damage something like this, oh man, it's hard to recover. Okay, so just read between the lines. You press them in, and typically what I do, I will have one of these marked. Okay, so I got a little black line on the bottom. That always lets me know that's the bass side, and if this one is not marked, then that's the treble side. I'll put these over in my container, or my build container, and then I'll just leave the ones for sampling on the table. So if I'm working on the guitar, I've got the broken down guitar in a certain Seymour Duncan pickup box, and then I can pick these up, and I'd be willing to bet you this guitar that if I put that one in on the bass side, then it's going to line up perfectly like it did a year ago or 6 months ago. And typically on these, leave these out of the body. Just I'm looking at maybe a 32nd of an inch, a little bit more, maybe a half a millimeter or something like that. That way that if you put a vibramate on here and you really torque down on that vibramate, you don't run the risk of indenting into your body or anything like that. Okay, so let's see if we can put it back together properly. There's the bass one, and then the treble. Okay, and then I'm going to move into talking about your pickup cavities here, because regardless of your scale or regardless of anything that you did, because see, if you could have done binding out here, it might have changed the location of this pickup cavity here. So I just learned, actually not very long ago. I've been thinking about, man, I need to make these little templates so I can do, if I need to make some changes, I can just throw this up here and tape it down temporarily and then put it on my drill press and run my drill press at about 3,500 RPMs and clean up things. So that's exactly what I just did about 30 minutes before I started this video. And this is actually what prompted me doing this video, because I don't like to do a video unless I've got something worthy of talking about, or at least showing, so that you could, pause that shot, read between the lines, and think about, oh wow, that either that's brilliant, or why did he do that, or I could have done this, or maybe I could have taken a board like that that's long, and then maybe I just clamp it out here and out here, and then go with a real small router up here in the middle, and I don't, because I don't have a drill press or something like that. So just read between the lines. I like using my drill press because it's a multi-variable speed, and I can run it up to, I think, 4,500 RPMs. But I have found 3,500 RPMs is fine for running just a real nice, precise bit, or either fluted bits, spiral up, spiral down, not fluted, or either, precision drill work and stuff like that. So, or obviously then chucking up, large stepped bits for alignment. So, and that's exactly how I did this. I put that exactly where I wanted it, based on I just did some cowboy engineering. I determined that, okay, if my pick guard is going to be in a certain location and I want this thing to be per 50 specs, uh, it was very easy. And I wasn't certain about, okay, do I want to open up this cavity towards the bridge or towards the neck pickup? And I was kind of just guessing, thinking, I'm definitely going to open it up towards the neck pickup, because I want to make certain that I've got, once this thing goes together, even though we're not going with a covered pickup, I want to make certain that I machine this body to receive a covered pickup, because we're going to be going with the uncovered pearly gates, the set of zebras. But if you can see that right there, that gives you a little bit of movement even in a covered pickup. And yes, they do require a larger opening for movement than a uncovered. But I was able to just throw that up there and look at it and go, oh yeah, I want to open it up a little bit. And I took off about another almost a 16th of an inch in that direction. So it took off a 16th of an inch on the front, the sides, and even on the sides back there, but it didn't really take anything off. Well, it didn't take anything off back here at all. All right, so let's remove that. And one trick about this, doing double-sided tape, if you're, let me just do it and I got to make certain that whatever I do, I don't script the guitar. Okay, so all I did was just kind of slide into it. Don't start digging in prime, because if you slip, oh my God, what a nightmare situation that would be. And when you get it to that point right there, don't necessarily just pull it over. Maybe put a little bit of a side twist on it. Okay, and that's what it's going to look like when you remove your sacrificial tape. And basically all this is just you put a piece of masking tape down on your surface that you're going to be machining, and then you put a piece attach two pieces on that, your template, and then you put one or two put like two dots of medium strength, medium, or thick. Do not go with the thin, because the thin, there's no telling where that crap will go. I got stuck there. All right, let me just get it cleaned off, because I hate stuff like that left when you're trying to do a video. And all the more reason to make certain that you build your guitar first and then do all the spray work or finish work, the final spray work, final finish work last, because last thing you'd want to be doing is sitting here with a 100% fully finished guitar that now you're installing the pickups and you realize, oh crap, man, now that pickup won't fit. And now you're having to do all that intricate machine work in a completely finished guitar. Now, you can, as long as you know what you're doing with your masking tape and your glue, and you're not, the trick is if you put masking tape down here and masking tape up here, don't clamp that. If you clamp that, it will actually force the CA glue through the tape, and it actually will contaminate your surface. So just don't clamp it, but make certain that you just press it down and hold it so that it's perfectly stable. So build yourself a couple of little jigs for making changes or correcting screw ups. Because if you were building a guitar and let's say you needed to let's say you got it off a little bit and you're a little bit low, but you needed to move your pickup down. Well, rather than pulling out a file and shaping on that, it might be a fairly serious amount that needs to be routed out. Well, then all you might be wanting to do is just routing off this bottom, and you can have a nice little item like that right there, and then all you're doing is machining off the area where you need to move the pickup. 21 minutes. Okay. Well, I have to remind myself, we covered a lot of information related to the tailpiece. Now machining that hole. Now let's see what it looks like. Nice, beautiful. And this is kind of a tricky situation. This top, even though it's rift sewn, almost quarter sewn antique pine, it looks like it's a bunch of pieces, but it's not. All it is two pieces coming in on an angle where the inside, the piece on the outside was just not quite wide enough to do a full run. So rather than throwing that entire piece away, I actually just laminated a small little triangle in here. But then once you machine into the body, it looks like that antique pine might be running parallel with the center line. It's not. It's running on a 19-degree with the body, just like a traditional Flying V was built. But that's why it looks like it's a multi-piece top. It's really not. It is, but it's on an angle, and every bit of this back here is a solid piece of antique pine that is almost quarter sewn. Therefore, that's where you get your snappy tone. Okay. Now at this point, you'd want to come in with your nitrocellulose lacquer and an artist brush or a brush, and seal that. Seal that about 4 or 5 times. Seal it. Wait 3 minutes. Seal it again. Wait 3 minutes, seal it again, keep your lacquer over on the side, and just really stay on point. I don't want to do it right now because I don't want to stink up the shop while I'm doing this video. I'll do it later on, but you want to make certain that you seal all those edges. Okay? All right, so 24 minutes. It ought to be self-explanatory, but if I want to play this guitar within just a matter of moments, here's how quickly it sets up. And there's a part of me that I almost have to ask myself, man, I wonder if this design was not intentional from a manufacturer's standpoint. A lot of us, we don't think, we just think, oh, it's a tailpiece in order to hold the strings. But they may very well, back in the 50s, they might have thought about this thing and said, okay, we're going to have a setup, a setup set of strings just for alignment, and we're going to leave this over on the side table, and we get a guitar that slides across our table. Then we just pick up our tailpiece and we throw it up there, and we put the strings on it when we make assessments, because I'm certain they had some fairly accurate machine jigs to help them align stuff. But if you're building handmade guitars, you don't have the time or the reasoning to build those jigs. So you're wanting to set this guitar up after you hammered your frets in, play it, even though if it's going to play like a dog. I mean, it's going to play, well, it's not going to feel like a finished guitar. But the first time you set it up, you just want to hear it. You want to hear it for the first time. And trust me, when you first string up a hollow body guitar, it's just inevitable. The first time you string them up, they sound like a banjo. And it's frustrating and it's scary, but it's amazing how quickly they start warming up. I don't understand that, but from a molecular level, I do know that the more the guitar top and the back moves and breathes, it starts changing its tone and it gets more of a pure articulate sound. But you're going to want to continue to set this up, determine is a fret low, is a fret high, or if there's an issue that you might be worried about, is it even an issue once you string it up? That doesn't mean you don't address that high or low fret situation. It just might alert you to how critical it is to get it absolutely perfect or just get it really, really good. Now, I've got these perfect, which that's always my goal. But by having this setup right here, it allows me to set this guitar up, break it down, set this guitar up, break it down as many times as I need to, make changes, make corrections, and then do a video and get stuff off the table so I can try to keep rocking and rolling. So that's how fast it was to set the guitar up, and now this is how fast it is. Well, I'll leave these in so I don't risk getting scratched or damaged, but that's how quickly we can break it back down. Okay, what have I done since? Frets have been polished, leveled up to 1500 grit, sanded, tweaked, worked. I have not strung it back up and played it, but I have gone across the entire guitar with a fret rocker, and there is absolutely zero rocking at all. So everything about the fret job is perfect. And also you can hear that metallic. Let's do that. Let's do that test real quick. We're going to do a metallic tap test a little bit to see. Oh, I still haven't put this fillets in on the side. But anyway, you're just wanting to, I'm not going to spend much time with this, but that's what you want to hear. That's incredible. This guitar's, that's going to be, as I mentioned in the last video, that is going to be the optimum tone, or by doing that work, that's going to create our optimum tone. There's no way I could really get it to sound any better than that right there. And how you can change the tone of the guitar from here on out is the type of string you use. If you use, like a flat wound jazz string, 11 to 52, if you could handle a heavier gauge string like that, this thing would sound amazing. I mean, from a jazz guitar standpoint, but and I'm just introducing that to the client so that if they don't like the tone of the guitar, well, hollow body is hypersensitive and it's far more sensitive to string change, I believe, than like a solid body guitar. And now that we've got these frets in here and everything really nice and a good connection there, you could change the tone of the guitar by the type strings you use. Chad had mentioned he likes the 10 to 46 slinkies, and I'll put those on there, Chad, but the strings that I've been playing on it, they are 10 to 52s elixirs, and they're pretty bright. It's a bright guitar. So I think the 1046 Slinkies, in my opinion, would be too light. They'd be too bright, too slinky. But it's not my guitar. And if you're a real gentle player, a real delicate player, then that would probably be an incredible string. But with anything a 1046 and under, if you got real choppy and real hard, I'm not sure this guitar. It might be just a mid-range monster. Okay, so I'm just introducing that in a real general fashion so that people will think, oh, okay, well, it looks like a Flying V, and it looks like a rock and roll guitar and all that jazz. But this might be the one guitar in your arsenal where you put some heavier strings on it, or you put some flat wounds on it, just out of curiosity, and you see what the guitar sounds like. You can always take them off. You don't have to leave them on there, but just experiment with that, Chad, and just let me know, because I don't have any flat wounds in stock. It's not to say I won't buy a set just out of curiosity, because to me, I always approach guitar building from how can I get a guitar to sound as close to studio quality as possible, and in the realm of playing jazz, or playing like bop or swing or stuff like that, or just real incredible melodic lines and stuff like that. So okay, so the frets are polished. We're taking up to 1500 grit. I didn't wet sand them, but I did have the fretboard 100% taped off. It was basically mummified, so you could not see any of the wood at all. And then you only carried over, well, it doesn't matter. You carry it over as long as you want, because we haven't finished the guitar yet. But you do want to have all of that completely taped off when you're getting ready to do all of your sanding or leveling work, and then in preparation to level and polish and all that stuff. Okay, and especially you should have already beveled your edges, as I'd mentioned in the last video, where you've got this thing really protected with like plates of metal or extremely heavy cardboard, because losing something like that's not an option. I dropped a little bit of nitrocellulose lacquer in there. I'm building up a low spot, so that's what it looks like. Oh, and also looking down, I got the side dots glued in, and I'm glad I looked at that, because you might look at that and go, "Good God, those side dots are absurd. That's way too much." That's not the actual side. Let me get a file here. Okay. All right, let's talk about side dots briefly, because since I showed it. That's just the mixed up epoxy that is dripped down into the actual cavity, and I did that like 3 or 4 days ago. So basically, I laid out all my side dots. I marked them. I identified them first with the pointer. Then I came in with a 16th inch drill bit. Is that how I did it? Yeah, probably not. I've got a little pointing to a 45-degree pointer that I will. Oh, I know what I did. Took an X-Acto knife after I pointed them, and then I did a little bit of cowboy bevel work to make certain that I had the center location, and then I came in with this little broken bit with a point on it, and this is extremely sharp. I got this down in South Florida at a marine supply house for guys who build extremely high-end yachts and work on really high-end wooden boats. And this is an extremely sharp bit, and I broke it, of course, but I just use it as a little a reaming tool, and then I reamed it a little bit, because every bit of these, I drilled every one of these by hand, just with a handheld drill right here. You can't, there's no way you could put that on a drill press and get it right. You've got to be looking at it and drilling every one of these by hand. So by drilling the first location with a 16th inch drill, if I was off a little bit, once I stepped up to my 3/32 inch drill bit, I knew I had already reamed it a little bit and made the correction. So you got all your locations drilled. Then you come in with, that's when you come in with some CA glue. And I'm going to say use the medium so you can control it. But I use the thin, and I drip the thin on the tip of a toothpick. And then I sealed the bottom and the side walls of the locations with CA glue. And then I clean that up a little bit more with my drill bit. I just press the drill. I flip the drill bit over on the flat side and just pressed it down in there to make certain that I had a really nice, well sealed perimeter. And then I mixed up my 24-hour epoxy and I tinted it with a little bit of my white tint. And the cool thing about my white tint, it's not snow white, it kind of has an amber white tint to it. So now that it has been drying for several days, take your crosscut file. Stay away from your frets because you've got them polished. Well, you've got the initial polish work done. Typically, when you're building a guitar, you're going to have to go back and repeat some stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm gonna let it touch those frets a little bit, even if I have to scar them a little bit. And voila, this is what a handmade guitar is supposed to look like. Isn't that beautiful? I can just look at that and tell, oh man, yeah, that is a hand cut guitar. So, I mean, a handmade guitar, and those are cut. And I'm letting it roll just a little, because see, I still haven't finished the guitar completely. It's close, it's getting close, but I'm having to make 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then if you ran into a situation where, well, let me back up. Before you drop that epoxy down in there, you better have guaranteed yourself that you didn't have any chip out or tear out, because if there is a tear out there, that white epoxy will identify exactly what is wrong. And if you had a problem, you take your X-Acto knife, clean it up right on the tip. Then you come in with your sandpaper. Now what will happen here, you have to be careful because the sandpaper will pick up the ebony or rosewood dust and it will contaminate your side dots. Things are getting heavy. I'm sorry if that wasn't on the camera very well, but I'm just kind of showing you all the operations that I go through a little bit to finish a guitar. And then at this point, maybe just take a little bit of minerals. Well, at this point, just leave it alone because you've still got other work to do. But before you start doing your final clear coat work, then you're going to want to hit that with just a little bit of mineral spirits on I just use like a Bounty paper towel that's just kind of moist from mineral spirits, not wet at all. Because the most important, at this point, if you want to know the truth, you could just use a paper towel and maybe a tack cloth and you'd be ready to spray. And you've got to make the determination, do you want to tape off the fretboard? Oh, this is very important. Because also you're going to, as you're rolling this fretboard, you're going to want to sand in between each frets to make certain that you don't have a sharp edge. Okay, I'm not going to do it too much, but I have not done that yet. I haven't really done the final rolling on the fretboard. The final roll work is finished on the ends of the frets, but I'm going to do just a little bit. When I say sanding, I mean just about that much right there. That's all I'm going to be doing, just enough to make certain there aren't any sharp edges. And can you feel that? Oh, you better believe it, especially down here. And that's what it takes to build like a really high quality guitar. And the cool thing is you want it to feel just as good as it looks. Quite frankly, I want it to feel 10 times as good as it looks. I could care less what they look like with respect to, being a craftsman. And it's kind of, this type of stuff is really addictive but you see how quickly they come together. It's easier to do it from the back to the front because see, it comes together very fast. Okay. This is a 220, but it's kind of a worn out 220, or it's a worn in 220. If you had if you had a brand new sandpaper, I wouldn't be using anything under 400. A 400 grit would be perfect for that. Okay. And this, now you see the importance of why you would not have wanted to shot this lacquer right here on the initial guitar with any sort of tint in it. Because see, I actually went through the nitro there a little bit and exposed the raw, well, a little bit, not much. But if this had been a real dark artificial fake tint, well, now I would have a pinstripe right there that I'm trying to touch up, and that's a sign of someone who doesn't know how to finish a guitar, or someone who's learning their lesson about how not to build a guitar. And I speak from experience from like 25 years ago. We were really bad about 25 years ago when we got a hold of the artificial tints. What's it called? Trans tint. When we started finding out about this stuff right here called the trans tint, the amber or the honey amber, just go with the lightest shade you can, because that stuff is really potent. And most of us, when we first started using that stuff, we were coming out of the gate way too dark or way too antique looking, and they just really looked bad. Okay. Hopefully we're under 45 minutes. Yep, we are 41 minutes. Okay. I didn't really get to talk about binding nearly as much as I would like to, so let me just look at the guitar. I don't think there's anything else to talk about related to the guitar, because we already talked about using the fret rocker in the past video to actually start working your way to that finish line. So let's talk about binding. And the reason I'm talking about this is actually because Chad had shot me a message, and Chad, I didn't realize you were into building guitars as well. So that's cool, and I wish you luck with your Les Paul project, Replica Les Paul project. But Chad had asked me about binding, and I'm just going to go straight to the finish line. And for someone who's asking me questions about binding, then that lets me know they need some simple answers. So let's talk about just simple binding work first. If you are building a 59 replica, then I found the quickest and the easiest and the most simple way to do that binding, which is just a single piece of binding. It's it is a 60 thousandths binding, or that's 1/16 of an inch. Well, I found the easiest way to do that. We're all going to have a bit like this in our arsenal for doing, face work. But if you take that 1/2 inch bearing off the bottom and put a 3/8 inch bearing up there, you have all you need to do binding for a 59 replica or any type of guitar with a 60 thousandths binding. Now, this one is not. This one is a 60 thousandths binding over I may be wrong about this. I'm gonna stop talking about this one. This one may be a 40 thousandths binding with a 20 thousandths under it. In other words, that's a 2-piece binding. So if you went with a 40 thousandths, I may have done that just to make it easy. Yeah, I'm almost certain I had, so I apologize for not knowing that. So if you wanted to do a 2-piece binding, or a binding with some sort of identifying strip around the perimeter, like if you had a light colored guitar and you were going to go with a cream binding, but you wanted to have that 2-piece strip identifier just like I did there, well, then you could go with a 20 thousandths black and a 40 thousandths cream or white or whatever, and then you got a beautiful, beautiful guitar. And it was just a little bit more complex of a binding job because it's a 2-piece binding. And you wouldn't install one piece of binding and then let it dry and install the second piece. You're going to be installing these simultaneously. So you're going to be starting with your initial point up here with both these, and you're going to be binding this all at once. Even if it's a 7-piece binding, I bind everything all at once. So that's a really complex job, but if you're wanting to know how to do that, then if you got the Robert Benedetto video build series, he shows you exactly how to bind a body and bind it 7 piece all at once, black, white, black, white, black, white, black, and then outside cream. And it was amazing how easy he made it look. It's not easy, but makes sense because he did it on camera, and it was after I figured it out, that was amazing because you've got to know how to do that if you're going to build a Les Paul replica that is a custom where they have the multi-piece binding, or if you can build a jazz guitar. So anyway, use that half-inch bit with a 3/8 inch bearing route for a 60 thousandths cream. Do your simple single binding, and you got a 59 replica. Okay, but if you wanted to go into the world of doing stepped binding, then you're going to want to get some sort of a bit system that allows you to change the bearing size and go down in micro increments. And if you're really going to do guitar building, you need to invest in the set from Stuart McDonald. I think it's about $130 to $150, but I'm pretty sure it's a 1/4 inch shank and I don't know because I don't own it, but I just know go on stmac.com, look at their routing bit assemblies, and you can buy a kit that has a whole bunch of different little bearings in it, and then you start engineering. You know, whether you're doing a black, white, black. If you're doing a 3 piece binding, a 2 piece binding, a 7 piece binding, then you will engineer that cut based on the bearing set. And in hindsight, I so wish I had invested in that 15 or 20 years ago because it would have saved me from doing this crazy cowboy stuff right here. But this actually works really well. Just take a mental image. Um, that that gets connected to the bottom of a trim router. I have like a little DeWalt trim router, and then this is nothing more than a layout brass that you can get from your big box hardware store for laying out stair systems. This is really tight, but you can loosen that and adjust the depth on this little guide, which I installed a bearing atop that, and then I fasten this to the bottom of my router base, and then the router bit sticks out of the bottom here, and then I can adjust. I can slide this back in order to expose as much router bit as I want. I leave one single router bit chucked up in the tool, and I can vary the depth by either raising or lowering the bit. I hope that's in the camera. It should be in the camera. I'm doing the best I can. So if I want to go with a real shallow route, I raise the bit. If I want to go with a real deep cut, meaning deep down from the top, then I lower the bit. Right at the point where it's just about to kiss that and touch, I can get extremely close. And then I'm not changing the height of this item right here. Okay, but I am able to change the depth by which this bit reaches up into the body. Because if I'm routing a 7 piece top, I think I'm going to be going about a 1/4 inch deep into the body, and that's extreme. Okay, and you don't want to go a 1/4 inch deep into the body depth that direction. You do not want to go a 1/4 inch deep in that direction and also a 1/4 inch deep down in the body. You can't not on a chambered or an arch top. You'll cut the guitar in half. You've got to step in with a real shallow cut on the top, and then your 10 thousandths or 20 thousandths binding up on the top. It's literally only about an eighth of an inch tall. It's very, very shallow. So what you might be looking at thinking, wow, that's all plastic on the corner. It's not. It's very shallow on the top, and then just with that outer perimeter cut. Okay, and to me, I think most likely they were doing that to conceal all of the build marks, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But by using a tool like a little jig like this, and you can buy again, those are brass stair layout. I can't think what they call stringers. I believe it's weird. I used to know that stuff. I'm looking at a set of stairs behind me, but you put that on a a framing square, put one on the rise and one on the run, and then you could lay out a set of stair. I think they're called stringers, but I used it to make my own routing jig. Okay, check the time. 49 minutes of some cowboy carpentry. All right, let's find that bit and put it back together. So, and then I always leave my little 3/8 inch bearing down in there because if I'm doing face frame work, then I just use it with a 1/2 inch or change it over. Okay, no sense in talking about binding anymore. And also, Chad, and for any of you guys that are interested, Stuart McDonald, they have some great videos on how to do this, how to do that. And I know they have a video series on how to do binding, and they talk about the importance of you know. This is not cheap. This is about $32 for that small container, but this is the most incredible binding cement I've ever used. I wouldn't. I don't want Steermite to catch wind. I would be willing to pay $50 for this because of the how quickly it works, how precise. This is a great tool. And when you're a great cement. And when you're doing all your binding, you're coming in and you're tape. I like to tape. Again, if you can get a hold of the Robert Benedetto video series, the DVD set, man, when he does his binding work, he is teaching an absolute master level class within about 20-30 minutes of him doing binding. And if you can learn how he does his binding and the direction by which you start or finish, you will very, very quickly be able to land a job at a master luthier shop making very good money if you're able to do binding work. It's very hard on your joints though, and as I get older, I notice that man, I struggle doing binding because of a little bit of arthritis that's building up. But nonetheless, bind all cement, um, ABS plastics. I get a lot of my binding from All Parts or All Parts suppliers. Their cream All Parts binding is beautiful, and I think they make the parchment now as well. Well, I know they do because I've been using the parchment binding as well. All right, let me check the time. Okay, so you got a guitar, and this action is way crazy high. How do you get it under control? You take your time and you don't worry about it when you're doing your first string up and you're playing because you're just wanting to hear the guitar. But the first thing you're going to want to do is use a capo. And trust me, I'm going to blow through this. This is not going to be enough information to actually do the job probably, but it'll get you thinking. After you have it strung up, typically what I do the first thing, I want to get the bridge height as low as possible and actually beyond it. I want it to buzz like the devil and just be really nasty low. But I can't do that if the nut is really high. If the nut is really high, let's see if this thing will still hold itself. Yeah, look at that. I'm going to brag a little bit. That's an exceptional build. When you can get your nut to get the nut to do that, that's an exceptional build. But it's still very high. So what I do, I put a capo up here, not very close, but close enough for rock and roll, close enough to lock it off. Then I start dialing down the bridge. And when I say dial down, I mean dial that baby down to the point where the strings are just about laying on the fretboard. Then start raising those. And for video purposes, I really should have left that set up. Don't worry too much about anything being finished. Just take it as low as you want. String it up, and then start raising this until you get it to about 90%. It's playable, but every now and then you're fretting out really bad, and you'll come up here to the maybe the 13th fret, and it jumps a full note and a half. Well, then that lets you know those two are a little bit high, but don't start sanding on those yet. I'm just wanting to identify the issues based on the vibration of the strings, because what's going on the bass side might require more attention than what's going on the treble side. Okay, and I just start raising, and I want to raise this bridge. If I go up a quarter of a turn here, I want to bring it up a quarter of a turn here. Visually, when this guitar is finished, I don't want to see anything crazy like this right here, where I was too lazy to start working the strings down into the saddles. Okay, I'm raising everything incrementally and very much balanced. Okay, and then after it's all said and done, uh, I run them fairly low profile. If I'm not running a pick guard, I've already covered this in numerous videos. If I'm running a pick guard, that is an eighth of an inch thick. If I'm running a pick guard, I don't have a problem with this being up here. I really don't. I'm okay with that because it'll feel great when I'm planting my pinky along the pick guard there. But if I'm not running a pick guard, I got to realize it's okay for this to be a little bit lower, as long as that if as long as I can take this down and it start fretting out and buzzing and really bad, then I know I have a bridge that is I have a pitch to bridge relationship that is sufficient for me to manage low, high. Because see, some guys might want to do like is the guy's name Stanley Clark, I believe, that does like all the tap work. He's almost like a piano player on the guitar. And I kind of like that stuff back in the 80s a little bit, but it's one of those things where you can listen to it for a while, but then after about 30, 45 minutes, it's like, okay, all right, let's play some chords. But if you're that type player, you want to have an extremely, insanely low action, a perfectly flat fretboard, very high output pickups, so that everything's just very touch sensitive. But I don't like that type playing. And most of us out there, we do chordal work and we do power chords. And you look at a guitar like this, and it's one guy had chimed in. It's like, I don't know, why would you want that to be like a jazz guitar? It's a rock and roll guitar. Well, that's true. I get your point. But where I'm going is the design of this guitar is perfectly symmetrical. And if there's ever an incredible opportunity to have a very neutral and symmetrical note throughout the entire fretboard, it's with a 100% symmetrical body. And that was kind of my research from 20 years ago, where I was curious about, I wonder if the Flying V would make it for a real nice hollow body jazz guitar. And if anything, the way we play them, we tend to straddle them right there and play them almost like a classical guitar, like if we're sitting down. And I found that, yeah, it's a really comfortable guitar if you can get the headstock dive out. And I did, that's why those are on there. I strung it up. When I was playing it strung up, there's no headstock dive. It's amazing. And it's not even loaded yet. It's not even loaded. So that is a huge accomplishment and a huge reasoning to mount at the 18th fret, design a little bit smaller headstock, and we have now finalized the engineering on the 1958 Flying V, and we have corrected whatever problems were there, because it's not the only guitar I would want in my arsenal, but it's definitely a guitar that I would love to keep in my arsenal is for the Flying V, but not at the expense of a head diving, you know what. Okay, 58 minutes, and I don't even know if I'm sorry, I got off track. I didn't talk about how to, let me just pretend like I didn't make a mistake. Okay, so you got the capo up there. You find the playability, you start raising that up to the point to where now it's a very nice playing guitar, but you're playing it from the capoed first fret. So now that you've got the bridge exactly where you want it, let's take it up about another eighth of a turn, and that guarantees that if we need to, we can take the bridge down, or we can obviously still raise it. Now what we're going to focus on is lowering the fret slots, or the fret slots at the nut slots, or we're going to want to lower the whole nut. And typically what I found it's far easier to come in with a real nice flat area like that, a piece of material. This is too thick, but you would lay a piece of material right here and take a real sharp mechanical pencil and make an identifying mark on all four sides. And then that will give you a line by which to monitor, are you staying true when you start removing material. Use a 120 on a very flat surface. That helps keep it true, guarantees. Then you just start sliding back and forth, and you probably want to put some tape on your fingers. Otherwise, you won't realize it, but you're sanding the flesh off of your fingers, and you'll realize that you did some really nasty damage. I can't wear gloves because I need to be able to feel it. But I will put masking tape on the sides of my fingers, and I'll start working that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's a very slow process, but it's better to spend 45 minutes sanding, shaping. You've got it strung up, slide the strings up, slide the nut up under it, check it, and how do you check it? In case I forget, I better just go straight to the finish line. How you check it is obviously you have the strings on it. Hope the camera doesn't cut off. But you've removed the capo, and each individual string, press down right here very close to that fret and assess how close that string is to the top of that fret. It would be okay if it's just barely kissing it. And if you're Stanley Clark or whatever that guy is, it would probably be okay that if it's actually kissing it and resting on it. But that's getting insanely low action. So if you press right here and measure visually the distance between the bottom edge of the string and the top of that fret, then go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the last one, and take a mental image of what did you just witness. If this one was insanely high over here, but this one was kissing over here, then that means you need to take material off of this side. So you'll want to pitch this up and draw that line on an angle. But be careful, that I never have to do that. The way I build my guitars, whatever needs to come off on the bass side is equivalent to the treble side. And then all I'm typically doing, I'm just guaranteeing that I'm taking off, a 64th of an inch at a time, working my way to the finish line. Because like I said, if I've got a nut that I paid $15 or $20 for that was pre-machined, I want to take advantage of that CNC machined nut, at least up to that last finish line where I'll just come in and maybe drop the G string just a little bit more or something like that. Okay. So just read between the lines, but just take a little bit off of time. It usually takes me about 2 to 3 hours max to really finish the nut, because see, the guitar is finished for the most part. Well, keep in mind, all this work that I'm talking about, that is after you have leveled and polished the frets, not your initial fret job. Your initial fret job was just to find the faulty frets, get them under control, now set back up, and now do your finish fret work atop A. And that's exactly what I'm about to do. See, I've got all my frets polished and leveled, and now I'm getting ready to take the bottom off of that nut. And within about 2 hours, I'll have a finished guitar. Okay. It was a